Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Monday Morning Directing. As always, I'm your host, Hobo, and also with me, as always, is Rick. How you doing, Rick?
5 hours of sleep.
All righty. Well, the perfect amount of sleep to do a podcast, right?
Of course.
So today we've got another, I guess, Halloween movie that's not really in the horror category so much as it is in the spooky category. Um, I'm gonna say right off the bat, I have no idea how this got promoted as a kids film.
Yeah, there is a lot of adult themes, but then again, I don't remember the year of this movie. Uh,
84, 87, 87.
Back in that era, they were very loose with PG in terms
Sure.
of like what you could put in them. I mean, I know PG-13 came out in like 85 or something like that, so I think
Yes,
it
something
it
like that.
it it took like more movies to catch on to like what to put in that be like PG.
Right.
Oh, I forgot you could just put the F slur in like a children's
Yeah.
targeted movie.
Yeah, and also like lots of really, I mean, for me, really cool gore effects, right? But very, very gory. Um, Lots of it's not sexually explicit, but there are a lot of sexual references, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, like and lots of cursing and violence and Dracula calls a 4-year-old a bitch. It's like Jesus Christ. Um for those that actually, in case it wasn't aware by the title, we're talking about Monster Squad. I don't think we mentioned it just now, but yeah,
Yeah.
I Monster Squad is definitely a movie that I could not see being made today. Not in like the way that it is.
I, c- I, c-
Um,
I could see this being like something that would go straight to streaming. I don't think that we're
mm,
in such like a weird era, like
right.
there was like a George Clooney movie that like dropped like straight to streaming. Like that's where we are, like
Yeah.
George Clooney.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, like now that you say it, it does feel very similar to like Stranger Things in terms of its content. You know what I mean? Where
I
it's
mean,
it's not
yeah,
it's not like a full-on kids thing, but it's also not really adult oriented necessarily. Um and well, but I don't know. I think the difference is Stranger Things is actually far more adult oriented than Monster Squad is. Um Monster Squad still seems very kid oriented with just like some really adult themes like scattered about. Um but I think as opposed to most of the individual movies that we tend to do reviews of, we have very little problems with Monster Squad like as it is. Like it's a fine movie. Um, there are things that I would definitely do better, but for the most part, like this is a it's a good movie. Like I'd actually recommend it to a lot of people, especially this time of year. It's a very good opportunity to look to watch these kind of not quite campy, but slightly campy. Um, I don't even know, like just good old fun movies. You know what I mean? It's nothing highbrow. It's not a movie that's gonna change your life, but it's just good spooky fun.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I
yeah.
would say like watch it with the family, but it is such a weird. No, actually, now that I'm looking at this, I just pulled it up. It is PG-13.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just pulled it up, but still, like,
But you look at the movie and it seems targeted towards kids. You know what I mean? Like, um, it's just it's a real weird movie into and you're right, it did come out in a time that was like kind of gray in terms of the MPAA, you know what I mean,
yeah.
since PG-13 was such a new rating. And yeah, I don't know, I just don't think it would ever, well, actually no, you're right, it would be like a Netflix original or something like that if it ever came out today, but
Straight to
probably
Hulu, straight to Disney Plus. Like,
right.
maybe not Disney Plus, but
Well, but yeah, no, I get
yeah,
what you're saying.
yeah.
Paramount Plus.
Paramount
Um,
Plus, yeah, 100%.
and so
To be
for,
original.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to tack one last one on there.
Tubi. What an odd streaming service Tubi is. Like, yeah.
That and like Pluto TV, which is so obscure.
I actually kind of like Pluto TV because it's free. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
some of them are free, and they have some like
I
cool, neat
I just
stuff. Like,
look, yeah, I don't mind Pluto TV actually. Pluto TV's got a lot of really good like tokusatsu, like Ultraman Power Rangers type stuff.
hmm,
Um, just uh, if you're into that, that's cool. You know what I mean? It's like and it's free, so I don't have a problem with like Pluto TV, for example. Um, that said, streaming services are super oversaturated and it's kind of become the new cable almost, you know what I mean, where you got to pay for all these channels to watch the things you want to watch.
we're coming full circle.
Yeah, it's just now instead of it being, through cable providers, they're all independent services, which,
Yeah.
you know, um
Anyways, back to the movie.
yeah, the movie, for those of you who don't know, is basically about this club of like elementary school and one middle school, like I want to say like tweens, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
um who are I mean, I don't know about you, but very much like me, obsessed with monsters and like universal monster movies and sci-fi and classic horror, all that good stuff.
It's
um
typical trying to be like the typical nerd club.
Yeah, well, but it's very specific in the way that it's a nerd club because it's the kids who like monsters, right? And um
Hold on. We gotta clarify. Like, kids who like monsters, and then kids who like peeping on women through windows.
well, yeah, there is that one very in through the modern lens very problematic scene where the the one like cool older kid who joins the club is just there to watch the guy's sister in her bedroom, which is real creepy. But
Also wears a like a greaser outfit, and then rides a not a motor, just a bicycle.
yeah, and he smokes, you know what I mean, which is again also pretty problematic. You know what I mean? He's like maybe 14 years old at best. He's 14 years old and he's smoking cigarettes and he's got a leather jacket and he. I think we talked about this before. How we're like, this is what Hollywood in the '80s thought cool kids dressed like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is just
Um,
greasers.
Yeah, which, I mean, I suppose a lot of the writers probably grew up during that time period where greasers were cool, and they're like, "What, we got to have this cool kid. What is he gonna be like? A greaser. That's the ticket. Everybody loves leather jackets and smoking. It's timeless. This will never ever, suddenly become really tacky." Uh, but different time.
Yep.
Um, but for me personally, like I actually uh weirdly relate to these kids with the exception of the greaser. Um, because they are into the same stuff that I was into at that age, right? Um, and again, I don't know about you, but the that sort of setting of just being like these kids who are into things that like the adults are like, well, it's gonna rot your brain, it's dumb, and then it turns out to be real, and then they become the heroes. That's seen in a lot of '80s like kids movies, the Goonies, um Gremlins to a lesser extent, but not really.
I've seen
um
neither of those movies.
yeah, we did talk about this, how you got to see both of those because those are both excellent movies.
Yeah, I know they're like cinema staple. Okay, I don't know if they're cinema staples, but Goonies probably is. I don't know about Gremlins, but
I think Gremlins is better than Goonies, but that's just me.
I can't comment. So
They're both great, but yeah, I mean, and so they're obsessed with monsters. Uh I empathize with that a lot. And then there's real monsters, and then they got to fight the monsters, and because they are uh the only people who believe that these things are actually happening, they're the only people who can stop them, and they use their specialized monster knowledge to defeat them, which is very cool.
yep.
For me personally, one of the biggest issues with Monster Squad is the monsters themselves.
They are utilized very poorly in this movie.
Agreed.
I'd say aside from Frankenstein, who I think has done
Yep.
well, I
Yep.
think
I
there
agree.
could have been a lot more stuff. Wolfman could have been a particularly interesting character as
Yes.
two personas. One is helping them, and then one's going after them.
Yeah, go into that a little bit more because I do remember us talking about that before, how you would have done the Wolfman very differently, and I think that the way that you would do it is really interesting.
Yeah, play that. I think Creature from the Black Lagoon and Mummy are
Well, wait.
just
So to be very clear, what how would you do the Wolfman?
I would personally I would have uh the Wolfman himself when he's in human form just try to like interact with the kids more because it's kind of like he's just going to the police and then he gets like no you're crazy and then it's like and then at the end he just dies by a silver bullet. Like I'd like to see him like actively helping the Monster Squad.
Like trying to convince them that he's a werewolf?
Yeah, something like that. Kind of like what they do. Like they have the Frankenstein like meetup like that. I think it'd be cool if Wolfman was also there.
Yeah. Um, okay, so for me personally, I know you haven't seen this movie, but there's the latest or like the last of the classic Universal Frankenstein series. Okay, wait, I take it back. Some people don't consider it part of the true Frankenstein series. I kind of do, even though it's not really. It's Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which happens to also have Dracula played by Bela Lugosi and the Wolfman played by Lon Chaney Jr.
It's the
Um,
first crossover, right?
no, the first crossover was Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, which was movie like number 4 or 5 in the series.
Oh, okay.
It was number 5, and so the some of the comedic element of that film is that Abbott and Costello's characters know that uh Frankenstein's monster and Dracula are around, right? But then they meet the Wolfman, and he's like, "No, you got to believe me. I'm turning into a wolf," and they don't believe him. They're like, "What are you talking about? You turn into a wolf." Frankenstein, I believe. Vampires, I believe. But werewolves, that's where I draw the line. I so as a fan of that movie, I think it would be kind of funny if the Monster Squad was like, "Yeah, right, you're a werewolf. Piss off, guy." You know what I mean? As they've got Frankenstein's monster just hanging out with them in their treehouse.
That would
And
be pretty
then
funny.
yeah, and then it turns out, oh, he actually is a werewolf, and then they have to, um yeah, so I don't know. I think that would be amusing. Um the other well, the main antagonist in this movie is a version of Dracula.
That sucks. I may add.
Yeah, it's bad.
No pun intended, actually.
Yeah, yeah, I did not notice that, but yeah. Um Yeah, Dracula. I think my first problem with Dracula is number one above all is actually his outfit. Um,
It is very reminiscent of Bela Lugosi's outfit, right?
yeah, but it's like turning up like the camp factor to 11
Yeah,
because
it does look like he just went to Spirit Halloween.
yeah, I mean, like for me, Bela Lugosi's costume in the original Dracula is far, and it could be because it's in black and white. Actually, now that I think about it, but to me it feels more in touch with the um I don't even know what to call it, but the time period around him, right? The time period, that's the word.
The
um
era.
yeah, the era. It feels far more in touch with that era, and it feels far more classy for that setting, you know what I mean? Whereas this Dracula, because the colors are so ridiculously vibrant, it makes it look like ridiculous, and especially because he's got like the super pale face, that is like, it's got like the whites contrasting with the bright red and the gold, and it's very it's a lot. um uh,
It would probably
so
be better if so I believe Dracula is at the beginning of the movie there's Van Helsing. He does this spell or whatever to like get Dracula sucked into a portal, right? And they all
mhm.
get sucked in, the place caves in. and then they wind up in the future, or Dracula at least. It would have been
Mhm.
cool to see Dracula at least try to blend into society or try to understand society, but no, he just
Right.
kind of just like goes
Yeah.
on how he does.
No, and that could actually be a very comedic element. I mean, we talked about last episode, the TV show that you and I very much like, What We Do in the Shadows, how you have um these ancient vampires trying to interact with modern society for comedic effect.
Hmm.
And yeah, no, I think you're right. Like having him kind of be like freaked out with by like, there are cars driving everywhere now, and maybe have him interact with like the I guess stereotypical like 80s punk rocker, right? And just like, look at what's going on, or all.
It kind of the scene you're describing to me very reminds me of Jason Takes
I
Manhattan.
was gonna say the exact
Yeah,
same thing,
okay.
yeah. Where he kicks over the boom box
Box.
and
Yeah.
all that yeah, I mean it's the same thing, right? And it's like in that scene is honestly that's the best scene in that entire movie, Jason Takes Manhattan, you know what I
Yep,
mean?
that is
um
objectively the best scene in that movie.
yeah. And so I like I agree 100% that you can keep yeah, because I was gonna say that the wardrobe needs to change, but you can keep him in the goofy outfit if he's doing suitably goofy things.
Yeah, I
um
guess. He's
or
doing
or I
like
suppose
pseudo serious things.
he's at least in goofy circumstances. You know what I mean? Like he can be the quote unquote straight man, right? Um y- but yeah, I also think his goals are really vague and kind of bland.
I think it would have been better if he lands in like some dude's backyard, right?
Mhm.
And he just makes that the guy whose yard he landed in, he just makes him his Renfield or something.
Right. And like have the sort of stereotypical like UFO movie like in The Blob or Killer Clowns from Outer Space, right? Where you land in some country hick's backyard. He's
Yeah.
like, "What are you doing?" And then, and he's the Renfield. Yeah, no. It's really tough because Dracula could have been really good because look, honestly, if you take any of the classic monsters, if there's going to be one big bad villain, it's Dracula, right? He's the most intelligent. He would be the one to get all of these monsters to team up together to help him to rule the world, or whatever it happens to be. But in this movie, his goals are really they're super vague. Like, yeah, he wants the amulet, but then like why? To rule the world, but like how?
I completely forgot what the amulet does. Hold on, I just pulled up the
It opens
page.
up portals to other dimensions, but Dracula wants to use it to plunge the world into eternal darkness so that the creatures of the night can rule forever.
Oh,
So yeah, I mean it's fine, right? But
it's
and don't get me wrong, it works for the movie because Dracula isn't the focal point. He's just like the big bad that the kids are trying to defeat, right? But with the exception of Frankenstein, all of the monsters are super boring. Like
I,
they have
they
them. Go ahead.
yeah, I was saying like Mummy and Creature from Black Lagoon, you can just take them out of this movie. Like they do
Like,
absolutely nothing.
yep, they show up briefly, get killed. That's it.
Do you think it'd be better of as a movie if there's no like the villains are like not united. They're just like individually wreaking havoc and this monster squad's
Hmm,
got to go one by one to take them down.
that could be interesting, actually. Yeah, I was going to say that you just gotta have like give them more personality, but yeah, I mean, no, I think that you're right, that's a better idea where you just um
Cause the movie it doesn't even make sense how Dracula like finds these like other monsters and is like you
well,
just work for me
it's just
now.
kind of implied that they've always been allies. You know what I mean? Like for time immemorial. Because I mean, because that's one of the things is that because they're using these really well known archetypes slash characters, you know. I don't know if they're specifically supposed to be the same Universal monster characters because I don't think this movie was made by Universal.
Distributed
Um,
by TriStar,
but
but that's
um,
hold on.
but it doesn't matter. But because these are such well established characters or archetypes, whatever it is, you know what their deal is already for the most part. Especially when it comes to Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, and Dracula, right? You know their shtick. I think that the way that you do the Mummy. Now, I'm personally kind of
It sucks with those two characters. They're so tied to their individual environments.
mm,
It's just
yeah.
like
Well,
there's that scene with the mummy in like the kid's closet, right? I'm like,
right.
why is he there? Like, what is
Yeah.
he doing?
That's never really explained. And yeah, it is just bizarre that he just like go into this random kid's closet and then immediately leave.
Admittedly, it was like a somewhat entertaining scene, but it just
No, it was a
makes
funny
no.
scene. But you could have that be part of like the monsters run amok scene where like he's
Yeah,
in the closet and then he's tearing stuff up and then they gotta go and all that other stuff. The I'm personally kind of a fan of the idea of what is kind of how do I put like the super antiquated view of the mummy because during the I don't want to say the Victorian era because I believe it was slightly after like the early 1900s. Mummies were kind of seen as the romantic monster for a long time. You kind of see this in the original Universal Mummy movie, but you also see it in a lot of short stories from the time about mummies. That like mummies were that they were at the time in the like probably up until the 30s, mummies were the sexy monsters rather than vampires. Like a lot of these stories are about like ancient um priests or pharaohs or whatever it happens to be princesses who have like hypnotic magical powers that are trying to uh seduce like in the case of the universal mummy he's trying to seduce the reincarnation of his lost love back in ancient Egypt, right?
oh
But
wait,
because
they do the same thing in the Brendan Fraser one.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
And so it's the same thing where I don't know. I think that would be kind of neat to have the mummy be maybe after the older sister or whatever it is, right? And so he's got his own aims that are separate from the other monsters, but he's still like up and around like by coincidence, right?
I think it'd be cool, but I don't know how that. I guess that could work, but it's like maybe the mummy, like he's just like decomposing like real time, and he's got to find like replacement parts
That'd be a fun little. Well, but how does he get the replacement parts
by murdering people.
and just stitching them on?
Yeah, but then he kind of becomes like Frankenstein. So I
Well,
don't know.
you can have him do like the mystical mummy power thing where like he sucks their souls and he
Yeah,
slowly
yeah,
de-ages, right?
yeah. That's probably.
Yeah, that
You know
would be
what?
fun.
It would be interesting. Like he does that, and he becomes this like smooth talker, right? Like after
Yeah,
he's just like hitting on ladies and all that stuff.
right. Like at first he's just moaning because he doesn't have his tongue yet, and then like his tongue regrows, he begins to like yeah, and then he slowly transforms into the sexy monster again.
Yeah.
I
I think
like that a lot.
I think that's like I think that'd be cool because I often think like I guess of this the scariest universal monsters to me would probably be the mummy.
Really?
Just for me. Yeah, I mean, again, this is more based off the Brendan Fraser movies because
Hmm.
that's the only context I have, pretty
Right,
much
fair.
this and that movie.
Yeah,
But like
fair.
that movie is like that the design they have for the mummy there is like just creepy. Like
Mhm.
he's like coming after you and he's gonna steal your tongue, he's gonna steal your eyes and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
No, and honestly, some of the older Universal movies, the mummy in those actually, for me, looks really good. Like he actually looks like a mummified corpse. Um, don't get me wrong, uh, a lot of those movies are not that good, but they are the mummy makeup and effects, are really good for the time. Same thing with the creature from the Black Lagoon. His suit for a 50s movie looks really, really good.
Yeah, it looks good. That's always been like the most one-dimensional character to me of the Universals, at least. Like,
Out of like these five that are in the movie, yeah.
yeah, of like those original creatures. I mean, I'm like,
Yeah.
it's just like he's very simple. It's just like leave him alone. Just,
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of the, how do I put it? Like the stereotypical sci-fi monster that
yeah,
was
yeah, he's a
popular in the
sci-fi
50s.
element. Yeah.
Yeah, and at that time when Creature from the Black Lagoon was made, there was a ton of monster movies like that where it's just about the dangers of science and exploration, right? That there's like these eldritch abominations that we shouldn't fuck around with. And the creature, or the gill man, as he's sometimes referred to, is that. And so yeah, I think that one of the things that he suffers from, especially in this movie, is that he doesn't have an established mythology. Like, he just gets killed with a shotgun. Like, he shows up, comes up out of the sewer, and then I feel bad, but the fat kid just takes a double barrel shotgun, blasts and kills him. That's it.
I
No, nothing more.
I
And it's
think
like,
the move with Creature from Black Lagoon is he comes into town. Maybe it's like river, or maybe he finds like a huge like Olympic sized swimming pool, and he kind of makes that his domain.
oh, right,
So
right, right.
people are just coming in, and he's just like,
Eating
yeah,
them.
yeah, attacking them and all that stuff.
Yeah. I Me personally, I think that the way that you would need to kill the creature is you gotta dehydrate him somehow.
Is that how he dies in the movie?
No, that's how I would want him to die instead of getting shot. Because
They just
I'll
drain the pool and he just dies.
that
That would
would
be,
be kind of that would be kind of funny in like a really anticlimactic way. But I was
yeah.
thinking, I don't know, like maybe some like some way they like freeze him, or like, I don't know, like he falls in a vat of salt and he becomes like dehydrated or something. Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know, because all the other monsters have like a cool way that they die that's tied to their thing, right? The mummy gets unwrapped, the vampires get the stake through the heart, Wolfman gets the silver bullet, right? Um and so it's like, man, Gilman really gets the short end of the stick. I mean, in all of like the Universal monster movies, he gets the short end of the stick. I think Creature from the Black Lagoon only got the two movies, whereas everyone else got like 10.
Was
And
he
he
in was
came,
he in any of the crossover movies?
no, he came at the very end of the classic Universal horror cycle. He
Oh,
was
right.
he was the last of the monsters, while uh the rest were from like the 30s and 40s. Um, my mic just cut out and then went back in. That's a bit weird. But yeah, um, I also really quickly want to brush up on the creepy German guy, just because he's
Right.
the first time I watched the movie, I did not realize that they had that he was a Holocaust victim.
I
That
I I thought like when we're watching that scene where he's like, okay, this is the only guy that can speak German, so or that could read German, so let's go to his house. And then
Mhm.
you pointed out when we're watching it that there's a menorah in the background. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, the joke is these kids just don't know anything. This is just a Jewish German guy.
yeah, and they thought he was like a Nazi spy and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then at the end, after they leave, it's like he says someone's like, "Oh, I know something about monsters," and as he closed the door, you can see like
Well, no,
the
the kids say, "Gee, mister, you really know a lot about monsters," and he goes, "I suppose I do."
yeah. Oh,
Which is
right.
a bone-chilling line, because he closes the door and he's got the number tattooed on him from the concentration camp, and it's like, geez, that is the most impactful scene of the entire movie by far. That like, I was like, man, it's a crazy line. It's a great line.
Yeah, I think he's a cool character, honestly.
He's a great character, yeah, and he's when he pulls up in the Jeep and he's like, "Get in, kids." it's it's a great he's a great character, and definitely something that I would 100% keep in. He's my favorite character in the entire movie.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot because I also particularly enjoy a lot of the scenes with the Wolfman. um like the number one line that sticks out for me in this movie is Wolfman's got nards, because they have they get cornered by the Wolfman, and they have like this argument because one of the kids is like, kick him in the nards, and it's like, Wolfman doesn't have nards, I said kick him in the nards, and then he kicks him, and there you go, the Wolfman has testicles apparently. Um and and the other favorite scene of mine is when they stick a stick of dynamite down the Wolfman's pants, throw him out a window, and then he explodes,
And it was
which is
very graphic. I was like, what? I
it
was
was
like, they're
crazy
actually
graphic.
showing this, and then he just
Yeah.
like comes back. I was like, okay, I know nothing about like the Wolfman lore. Can the Wolfman do that? Like,
No, it's never happened before. No one else did it. You know what I mean? Like every other time he had been like shot by a normal bullet and it wouldn't kill him, or like they attacked him with like sticks or whatever. No one had ever just blown him up. You know what I mean? And I'm like, dang, that's like and it's a really interesting contribution to the lore. The idea that you can throw him out a window and blow him up, and he'll still live because it's not silver, which is cool. Like I think that's one of the best parts of the movie for me. Like looking back on it was the contribution to the Wolfman lore, and uh all things considered, although I enjoy the Wolfman in this movie, he's not really a capital W werewolf, if that makes sense. He's very much in control when he's in his wolf state.
I
When
don't think so.
No, he is. He like has a well, not a conversation, but like he walks alongside Dracula as Dracula's like monologuing to him about his evil plans, and he's
I
just kind of
I
vibing.
thought I thought Dracula has Wolfman hypnotized.
Does he?
I'm
I
pretty sure he has Wolfman hypnotized, but I think it works in such a way that when Wolfman goes into his human form, he's no longer under Dracula's will.
hmm.
That's the way I read it, at least.
I mean, that would make sense to me.
Because
Um,
because his human form is like calling the cops, right?
yeah, and and the idea that the wolf and the human are two different people inside of the same body, or two different forces. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. The point of the Wolfman is that, or most of the time with any werewolf, the point is that it's a person who can't control their inner beast, right? Because the original, I guess, diagnosis of lycanthropy in the Middle Ages is what we would refer to nowadays as schizophrenia. That's where like the term lunatic comes from, is just like Luna being like the moon. And so there's a lot of like medieval accounts of like people who are quote unquote werewolves who would just like go and like kill children and eat them. And it's like, oh no, they were just like severely mentally ill serial killers. And the that's kind of what werewolves to me should always be, is like they are bloodthirsty people who don't want to kill, but they can't control it.
Yeah, I think that I think all of these guys unified under Dracula really just detracts from their each
Their individuality.
yeah, their individuality. They just
Yeah.
seem like pawns in a game, and they feel like shallow husks of themselves.
Right. No.
Them terrorizing. Okay, you know what this movie reminded me of?
What?
Have you seen the Jack Black Goosebumps movie that came out a few years ago?
I did when it first came out, and I haven't seen it in a long
That is a
time.
good movie.
Yeah, it was. I remember enjoying it.
It's kind of like that, where all the monsters come out, but they're not unified. They're just terrorizing on their own,
Right.
which I thought that would be a better direction for Monster Squad.
Right. 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 No, yeah, and then they get to go and have like they know all of these monsters are running about, right? Maybe even include a few more, who knows? But and then in my head, you have like the kids make this list, and each time they go off and they kill a monster, they check it off the list, right?
Yep.
And they're researching how to kill these monsters by watching movies or whatever, right? Um, and because they know that these monsters are lurking about, they have the list, they figure out how to kill them, and then they go and they like I kind of have this idea of like this not montage, but just like the climax, or like leading up to the climax, they go and they're killing the monsters, they check it off, right? And it's like, you know um yeah, like I think that you are 100%, it's not something that I had thought of, but you're 100% correct that it takes away from every monster other than Dracula. And unfortunately, Dracula isn't enough of a presence on his own for it to make up for that.
Yeah, they they really messed up Dracula, honestly, so hard in this movie.
Yeah, well,
He
okay.
is like annoying to watch. Like I always thought of Dracula as like a calm and like composed figure,
Hmm,
but that can be very intense, right?
right.
Obviously. But
Because you
then
know what he's
he's
capable of.
but then he's like calling a 5-year-old a bitch, and I'm like, that's
I
just a
think it's
terror.
great.
That's like it's funny, but it's also like detracts from the character as a whole. Like, because I think that's one of like Dracula's coolest abilities is that you can have a conversation with him.
Hmm.
Maybe he doesn't want to kill you. Maybe he does. It's not like these other creatures that,
Right,
go on rampages.
right. Well, I would argue that the mummy is the same, but I get what you're saying. So, what would you change about Dracula in terms of like his character? I mean, we already touched on his goofy sort of garb and um
So I think we just scrap whatever version of Dracula this one has in this
sure,
movie, right?
sure.
So all of the other monsters are very outwardly causing terror.
Hmm.
And I often thought it's like, what if Dracula finds himself a Renfield and he's kind of in the shadows, like yoinking people,
Hmm.
and people are just disappearing.
And well, my thought is perhaps even if you still wanted to keep Dracula as like the big bad, you could have him subtly manipulating the other monsters into doing stuff without them realizing that he's doing it. Like maybe he has like some sort of he sends out Renfield, or he himself talks to like the mummy and says like, "Oh, this girl is your reincarnated love interest, and go and get go after her." And he's manipulating them from the shadows instead of outwardly being like their overlord. Um, or the other thing that I was kind of sort of thinking about is the idea that maybe Dracula isn't revealed to be Dracula until like the very end of the movie, right? Like he poses as like a friend or like an ally of some kind, and then but they know that there's vampires about. And
Kind of like Lost Boys,
yeah, kind of like Lost Boys. Actually exactly like Lost Boys.
where
Although
it's revealed the mom's date is the ringleader
the
of,
head vampire, yeah.
yeah.
um and just something like that where it's like a surprise. I'm the big bad. I've been manipulating all the other monsters to do my bidding since day one, just so I could get close, so I could get the amulet, and now it's in my grasp, and then they reverse it on him, right?
Right. Would your where does Van Helsing fit in all of this? Do you think he even needs to be in this?
I don't think so. I think that the yeah, and by the way, in his movie, it is scary German guy or creepy German guy, one or the other. I think that the creepy German guy takes the place of Van Helsing in being like
Right,
the
yeah.
older guy who's like, and they don't need to have the Van Helsing figure to explain the monsters to them, because their Van Helsing figure is the movies and the comic books and the media that they've been consuming this whole time. So they're already experts on monsters, right? I
Right.
think that having a Van Helsing mentor figure kind of takes away from that a little bit. Um, because the entire point is that, them watching all these cheesy monster movies is not a waste of time because they saved the world. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, and so speaking of which, I think that the Monster Squad itself, like the kids, are perfect. Like I would not change a single one of them.
Really not even the cool kid?
Not even a cool kid. I think he serves his purpose. Don't get me wrong. I think that the aesthetic is super dated. And some of the stuff he does is very again in today we would never fly.
It feels even dated for the 80s, I'm gonna be real.
Yeah, that's true. But but he works, you know what I mean? Like because he's still the um I guess in the typical team composition, like or like the team interactions, he's the maverick almost, where he doesn't feel like he's got to listen to the other ones because he's older and he's in middle school. You know what I mean? Um, and I think he works. I think he's fine. And what I like about it too is most of the kids get a cool scene where they get to kill a monster, right? He kills all of the Dracula's brides, all the female vampires with the wooden stakes with the bow, right? Um and I the dialogue in this movie is really well written. It's very funny, it's very entertaining. Um and I think that the monsters are my biggest issue mostly. Because I mean, and again, like perhaps it's just because I can relate to it a little bit, but I love these I love these kids. Just the I don't know, they're just it's just the fantasy that I had when I was that age, right? That I was the badass monster hunter and I went around with like, you know, random shit from my backyard and I went and I killed Dracula, right? That's cool to me. Um and I think most of the kids are actually really good for child actors as well.
Yeah, they're definitely the cast I don't really have an issue with.
No. And I think that the characters are all fine. I mean, are they perfect? No, not really. And I think that you would change, especially like the cool guy, you change a little bit, but for the most part you can leave him in as a character, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
um the other thing that I wanted to talk about, what was it?
I don't know
god,
what it was.
god damn it, I had something else I had written down. Let me find it. And I cannot
Sam, you actually write things down?
yeah, I take notes for this show, I prepare.
Dude, I've been spitballing since day one.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, especially this episode, you've had a lot better ideas than I have. So even though I write stuff down, it's like apparently you don't need to. So good for you, man.
Uh,
That's just great for me. Um, oh yes, the one thing that I would change about like the Monster Squad is just that the older sister, who I don't remember the name of, but the older sister kind of shows up later into the movie.
I think it would be kind of interesting. A couple things,
Mhm.
right? I have two scenarios where this could go. It could either be Dracula trying to turn her into a bride, right?
Right.
Or Mummy is hitting on her.
Yep.
I think either routes is cool, but I
Yep.
do think Mummy, like after he's gained like his skin back or whatever,
Mhm.
being like a smooth talker is like
Right.
a funny and like new interesting way to go.
Well, and then you also have the dynamic of now cool kid who's got the crush on the older sister is now jealous and he's trying to convince her that she's talking to, 1,000-year-old dead guy and she's like, "No, you're just jealous." And it's like, "No, he's actually a mummy." Right?
Yeah.
And granted that's a bit cliche, but I don't know. I think it works, especially in this type of movie where
And this decade, like
yeah.
you can definitely get away with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the movie itself plays into all of these cliches from the 80s and also all of like the classic monsters, right? I think that it fits for this movie. And
Yeah.
uh it isn't quite a parody, but it does feel like it is a lighthearted take on these monsters. And so I don't know. I think that would still work. I think that would still be great.
Yeah,
Um
for sure.
yeah.
Another idea for Dracula is that he doesn't reveal himself until the end, like you said, but
Hmm.
maybe he's just been slowly turning people. So like at
Right.
the end,
Yep.
it's like they all start to reveal that like, oh, he's a vampire, she's a vampire, like
Right.
not part of the main group, but like
Hmm.
just like people they
Yes.
know.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Um, I think that'd be a cool climax to the movie. They got to fight all these vampires.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, I mean, I also think that there's a little bit of opportunity for new monsters to be added. I know that, the idea is that they're like classic Universal monsters, but I mean, I think it would be neat if they included something like maybe an Invisible Man type thing. Or who knows, like maybe an alien or like there's more potential to the idea of a monster squad if it's just
Well,
similar to like you said with the Goosebumps idea, just monsters run amok. There's all sorts of these wide varieties of monsters just everywhere.
I think that I don't think that would work as well, mainly because the Goosebumps idea is like those are just all of R.L. Stein's
Right.
creatures, and I think I don't know, like it feels maybe like thematically gray or something like that when it's like okay, you got like these core universal monsters, but then you got all these like other guys here.
Well, there are other Universal monsters you can include. I mean, the Invisible Man,
Oh,
Mr.
I
Hyde.
forgot about wow, I completely forgot about those two.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
you totally could include it. Man,
I
how
mean,
did I
if you
forget
wanted to,
about those two?
you could even include the Bride of Frankenstein. You could include like the Hunchback assistant Igor type if you want to include that. Even in my opinion, the idea of the Mad Doctor itself is the Mad Doctor is the true monster in the Frankenstein movies, right? So, you could do that. There's a bunch of other classic Universal monsters that aren't really there. And don't get me wrong, I understand why they don't because you can only include so much and they have time restrictions and budget restrictions. But I mean, I don't know. I think that there's more opportunity, especially because the Gill Man's kind of a weaker link. Uh,
Actually,
don't.
maybe even swap out. Actually, well, I think your idea of doing well, here's the thing. Do you want to have like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and Wolfman in the same movie? You know what I'm
You're
saying?
right.
Like they're
You're right.
very similar. So I'm like, maybe you
Right.
can tack on Invisible, but don't do Jekyll and Hyde.
Yep, you're correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't want to do Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde if you got the Wolfman because they're the same gimmick.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, like you have like an Invisible Man, and then like they throw like a bag of flour, and then they can see him, and then they just like beat him up. Even though
yeah.
I don't know, it's kind of tough for the Invisible Man because in a lot of ways the Invisible Man is just a guy.
I think it would be kind of funny if they just beat him up and then just slap handcuffs on him and he just goes to prison.
Yeah, no, yeah, that could work. And he's like the one that they don't actually kill, but yeah,
Yeah,
like, and you can have the whole comedic, like if you want to go like the full Tom and Jerry route, you can have them like throw the bag of flour, they can see him, they throw him on roller skates, they slide him out a window, like the full Scooby Doo, right?
yeah.
Um, and yeah, like I don't know, uh, and I'm sure that there's other Universal monsters that we're missing as well, but
I honestly like the ones you've mentioned. I thought were the only ones. I don't know what other Universal monsters there are.
well, because there's
Well, there's classic monsters. That's not what we want, right?
um, I mean, it depends.
Oh, Phantom of the Opera. Does that
Oh, Phantom
count?
of the Opera. Yeah, that's a tough one too.
That's a
Phantom of
scary face. I'm looking at a photo of the Phantom dude
yeah, the
unmasked.
the
That I don't
original
like that face.
you're talking about the original silent film one, right? Where he's
The
got like no
Lon
nose
Chain.
and yeah,
Yeah.
Lon Chaney, who is, the original Wolfman is Lon Chaney Jr. His father, Lon Chaney Sr., was the original Phantom of the Opera. He was also the original Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh,
Um,
Dracula.
okay, super brief tangent, but Lon Chaney Sr. was an incredible actor. Like he was, uh, he did all of his own makeup. He did all of his own stunts. Like in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, he does all of like this crazy acrobatic work. He does it all himself. His parents were both deaf. And so from a young age, he had to learn how to communicate with facial expression and body language instead of words. And he was in all of these silent films. And that's why he has such expressive faces and all of this in these silent films. And and you look at the Phantom of the Opera makeup from the original silent version. He did all of that himself. um and
Wow.
he was just an incredible actor, stuntman, makeup artist, the whole shebang. And he was originally meant to be Dracula before they cast Bela Lugosi, because Dracula was supposed to be the first sound horror movie. And but before that happened, he died of throat cancer, which is the most like ironic thing ever, that like he died of throat cancer in his first opportunity to talk on film. um
Yeah.
and so sorry for going on that tangent, but Lon Chaney Sr. Was just an incredible person. um
How would the Phantom of the Opera like what is he like a some weird like theater major? Like
well
I don't know
he
what his deal is.
he was once a like an opera singer who got like disfigured, and he becomes obsessed with this woman who is an opera singer. um and and he is like subtly like her patron basically. And he like is like, give her the starring role in the next opera, otherwise something bad is going to happen. And then they're like, okay, whatever. They go ahead and they have like the girl's rival star in the opera. And then he cuts the lights, cuts the chandelier, crazy accident, a bunch of people die, right? And then they're like, oh, it's a curse from the Phantom of the Opera. And so but then she goes and she meets him and she sees him and he's hideous. And it, the in the silent version, he's like an escaped inmate who was tortured underneath the opera, because the opera house was built over like these dungeons. And so he was tortured underneath where the opera house now stands. And and he's like a psychotic madman. In the other versions, like there's the musical, which granted I have not seen, but if I could be completely wrong on this, but if I remember correctly, he is far more sympathetic, and he's just like a disfigured misfit, and it becomes more of a love story. um and so in that respect, the Phantom of the Opera also doesn't really fit into our, I guess, pantheon, if that's what you want to call it. Because
Yeah,
we
he's not like a monster. He's like a human.
Yeah,
He's
I
just
mean,
like a
but so
guy.
is but I mean, so is the Invisible Man, so is the Wolfman, sort of.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
but he's not
I
supernatural. I get what you're
yeah,
saying.
he's not supernatural. Nothing like that's happened to him.
Yeah. And also, we've already basically got two romantic monsters in Dracula and the Mummy. So it's like, going for third, it's like may as well just make it a new Twilight, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we don't need like a love triangle
Well,
or a love
Love
square
Square. Yeah.
unless they're all in love with each other.
Hey, that's really spicy.
Yeah,
See, that's enough. That's a different movie, but yeah.
that's a different movie. There can't be any children in that one.
Well, I was, insert Jeffrey Epstein joke. I'm sorry, but
Oh God.
that's really bad. But
Oh God. It's like the Dracula is like a stand-in for Jeffrey Epstein.
oh,
That'd be horrible.
yeah, it's like, why is the mummy playing the saxophone, huh?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Anyways, you want to know a fun fact?
sure.
Okay, do you know who Shane Black is?
I might. I don't think I do.
All right, so he wrote this movie,
Oh, okay, right.
but he's also written Lethal Weapon,
Right, right, right.
Keep
You
in
told
mind,
me
he
this.
wrote that in college when he was like 20.
Right.
He's done Lethal Weapon 2, Last Action Hero, Iron Man 3, Nice Guys, and then he was an unofficial like script doctor for Predator, Hunt for Red October, and RoboCop 3. So
Oh,
it's a
dang.
very distinguished writer
Right, right, right.
who's done a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
Highly recommend his movies.
This honestly, this movie has had ridiculously good like writing in terms of dialogue, especially, right? The
Yeah, the dialogue does feel natural. Like honestly, they use the F slur, but like I could
sure,
totally
but
see that actually happening.
yeah, and it
Like
was
it,
it, yeah, it was a different time. It was,
yeah.
I
But
mean,
the dialogue is very on point. Kids sound like kids in this
yeah,
movie.
yeah, and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of cursing, but it's really funny, it's really witty, it feels, like you said, it feels organic, it's great.
Yep.
Um, it's just, yeah, I mean, the monsters are lacking, but the monsters aren't the focal point, right? It's about the kids.
Yeah.
Um, and the the poster for the Monster Squad, I don't know if you've seen it, but it came out a couple years after Ghostbusters,
Yeah,
right?
I've seen the poster. You
Yeah,
know who to call when you call ghosts.
yeah, but what do you do when you have monsters?
Which is clever. I mean,
Yeah, which
Ghostbusters was all the rave.
yeah, and it's like, I don't know, I like that little nod because Ghostbusters was huge at the time, right?
Right.
Um, and so, and that's why, oh, I think I mentioned it briefly that like you could have ghosts, but I'm sure that that's why they chose not to do anything like ghosts or anything spectral, right? Because
Right.
they didn't want to be viewed as a Ghostbusters ripoff, which it's obviously not, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, any other thoughts?
Nope. I think we got a solid movie. Let's go make it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough, honestly, because this is not a movie that you could really make today. I know that in the like early 2010s, I think I want to say, I could actually be completely wrong, but at some point there were plans to make a remake. It
Would
fell through. I don't know if they couldn't get funding or whatever happened, but
would it have been modern day? Like a modern day remake?
I assume so.
How does that even work? Like, see, I think the whole thing with these types of movies where it centers around a group of kids is that there's an inherent like lack of communication. Like it's all it
mm,
has to be like pre cell phones.
you're right. No, because yeah, I mean, because otherwise the parents can check up on the kids whenever, and then they see
Right.
that they're out
Which
fighting monsters. Yeah.
which to be fair, I will bring it up again. The Goosebumps movies, they do it because one of the creatures takes out the cell phone towers, so they
Mm,
can't use their phones. And that
right.
is a good movie. I think that's why that movie works. They kind of solve it in the writing there.
Yeah. No, and yeah, it's we were talking about this before as well, that like you never see any kid adventure movies anymore, like stuff like The Goonies or Lost Boys or this, right?
They're just kind of like a product of their time.
They really were just like an 80s thing. And if I'm being honest, I don't entirely know why, but that's a really good point, that I guess in the information age, it's very difficult for you to be a kid who goes out and has just like this completely independent adventure without any sort of parental monitoring or supervision, and just that sort of, because that's a big theme in a lot of these movies, is discovering your independence, right?
Right.
um and you can't really do that as cleanly anymore in dangerous and life-threatening situations that you definitely wouldn't want a kid to be in, right?
Right.
um and so yeah, maybe that's one of the reasons, is just that uh, the reason why you can't make those movies is because you can't do that as a kid anymore.
Right.
Yeah,
Do you think E.T. was the one that kicked this off?
maybe. I wouldn't be surprised. But uh, I
I
mean,
can't think of anything prior to E.T. that was like this
there were movies prior to ET that were like about kids, like going off and having adventures, right? But like okay, one specific example, which I guarantee you've never even heard of, is Santa Claus versus the Martians.
What? Hold
So
on.
it's
When is
this
this?
super cheesy, really bad, like absolutely bad movie from like the 50s or 60s that's about
Can Film Festival episode, season one, episode
it's
4.
about these kids who save Santa who was kidnapped by the Martians because the Martians are jealous that they don't have a Christmas. And so, that type of movie has been around, but not in the way that we think of it, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the child actors in that movie are terrible. The plot is ridiculous, right? It's really bad. Like it's not a good movie, but you know, um it's uh,
Speaking of which, it's free on Pluto TV and Tubi.
hey, shout out Pluto TV.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, that's why we said it before, but that's why I kind of dig Pluto TV because they got a bunch of crap movies that are kind of fun.
yeah. They should sponsor us.
They should. Pluto TV, I would love to get a Pluto TV sponsorship. You have no idea. I love Pluto TV. It's great. Pluto TV, hit us up. Honestly, like I don't care if we don't get hit up to do a Monster Squad remake. I want the Pluto TV sponsorship. That would be great.
Really? You would take that over a Monster Squad remake?
Yeah, I think I would. I don't think I could say that about very many other movies that we've done, but I feel like the original Monster Squad is good enough that this one isn't the most urgent remake.
I think we have crafted a better movie here, but there is
Agreed.
no ideal circumstances where this movie would be made because it's such a product of its time.
Yeah,
It's not even like Stranger Things, 'cause Stranger Things, um, the entire
idolizes the
thing
80s.
it idolizes. It's all about the nostalgia
Yep,
factor.
yep.
Whereas I mean, it would just seem so out of place if like a Monster Squad remake just
How
came
do you
out and
feel?
and it's set in the like 80s. Like it would feel so out of place.
How do you feel about a Monster Squad TV show where
uh,
like they're going after like a different monster every episode?
I mean, i I guess, but I'm trying to see how like long term that goes. I mean,
I mean, it doesn't have to be that
there's
long.
already TV shows kind of like that, like Supernatural or My
Yeah,
Babysitter's a Vampire. I love that show so much.
yeah. I
Got
mean,
fucking canceled.
similar to that, but like with a cast of teens. You know what I mean? Or tweens or
Possible. I
preteens.
mean, I could see it happening. I don't know, like, yeah, it's possible.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I mean,
In this day and age, everything like people prefer television over movies.
you
I
know
feel like
what?
I feel like that's just like the shift in like putting so much more effort into television.
I would have to push back on that in general, but I don't think that you're wrong that the place for a tween adventure type thing is definitely in a mini series over a movie. Because honestly, look, as cliched as it is, like people our age don't have the attention span to sit through an hour and a half, but we can sit through 30 minutes at a time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And somehow we're able to binge multiple seasons if they're 30-minute segments instead of like just sitting through a movie a lot of the time. Maybe that's just me, but
Yeah.
I mean I'm the opposite. Like I can sit through an hour and a half movie, but I can't make the investment to sit through an entire TV series. But
Mm.
um and I don't know, I think it's overused, and the idea of the short attention span has sort of been overplayed and demonized by our elders, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I mean, but it is true because
No,
you
it's
know,
not entirely wrong. It's overplayed, but yeah, I mean it comes from a very legitimate phenomena.
right. I mean, I'm just trying to get like TV show like Okay, like I could see this as like a limited series. I don't think I could see this as like an
Agreed.
ongoing TV show. Like,
Agreed. No, for sure. Yeah, that was my implication.
oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It wouldn't work as a true TV show. But again, you can have the they have the list of the monsters and they're checking them off and they check them off at the end of each episode, right? I don't know. I think it's not a bad idea.
Not a
Um
bad idea. I do think the movie would work better, but I'm like, dude, who is the audience for this movie anymore?
yeah, you're right. Honestly, who's the audience for this movie when it was made? I know it actually didn't do that well in
Yeah,
the
it
box
yeah, it
office.
did not.
And I mean, obviously it became a cult classic afterwards, but yeah, like who's the target demographic for this? You know what I
it's
mean?
it's
Like
gotta be like tweens, but then they threw in like, well,
so
like
much gore.
Shane Black himself, like a lot of his movies are like pretty super rated R, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
you can kind of tell he wanted to put more in there, but he also probably had to
Right,
reel himself back. It's like, this is a kids movie. This is a
right.
kids movie.
Yeah, but then there's, don't get me wrong, a lot of movies at the time like Goonies and Ghostbusters and that have a decent bit of swearing, right? Which I don't think is the worst thing in the world. I think that's fine. But like the gore in particular, as much as I'm a fan of the special effects, right? There's a good bit of gore and blood and the awkward conversation of having to explain to a kid what a virgin is. You know what I mean? Like it's yeah, it's a very odd movie. I love it, but it's a very, very bizarre movie in that respect.
Hmm.
Um I don't know. I think I would probably orient it more towards like a true like teen young adult thing. I guess similar to Stranger Things. You know what I mean? Where you can be a tween teen and you can still watch it, but it's also like it's got a very wide appeal towards older audiences as well.
I
Um,
guess. Would you set it in the 80s or would you set it now?
that's tough for me. I don't think it particularly matters. Um, Aside from the fact that the cool guy wearing, you know what, actually, it would be kind of funny if you said it today, right? And you still have the cool kid who's got like the leather jacket and he's dressed like a greaser, but then later on you find out that he's not actually like that cool. People bully the fuck out of him because he's wearing a leather jacket and sunglasses in 2020, right?
That would be funny.
And but the younger kids still look up to him because he's older, right? But
Yeah.
but in all reality, like he puts on this persona about being this cool guy in front of them, and then you have this moment where he breaks down and he's like, I'm not a cool guy, I'm not confident whatsoever, and then and then he finds his confidence, and then he learns to be himself and be comfortable with himself as he's killing monsters.
Yeah, that's
um
that's some good character growth.
yeah,
I don't think there's any character growth in this movie.
not particularly, no.
I mean,
um
I guess they learn not to hate the German guy.
yeah, and they also learn that trauma bonding is a way to keep your parents from divorcing.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. That was so fucking funny.
It's
It's
like
like, I gotta go down to the station, honey, but you
yeah,
promise. You know what you were getting into when you married me, and he
yeah,
just like walks out.
yeah, and it's
Oh
like it's
yeah,
like, and then at the very end, it's like, oh man, isn't it great that we all nearly died? Let's not get divorced, right? That's that's the end.
yeah,
Like there's no resolution to the marital issues whatsoever. They just
yeah.
um yeah. Any final thoughts before we close this out?
Nope.
Yeah. Monster Squad, honestly, check it out. Solid movie. Um, the I think we've made some legit improvements. And Pluto TV, hit us up. Uh, we're putting out this episode super super late, but
Yeah, I had midterms this week.
yeah, I mean it is what it is. But we are planning for one more big episode for the end of this month for Spooktober. Um and hopefully we can put it out on Halloween. At this point, I highly doubt it'll probably go out like November 2nd or 3rd, I bet. Um but you know, here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are. We have lives. If you want to change that and you want us to actually put out content on schedule, like and subscribe, get us some more views so we can actually make money off of this and we can dedicate more time to it.
Yeah.
It costs you nothing. Be really cool. Yeah. Until then, you're gonna have to accept the fact that we have to work jobs and get an education so we can get real jobs. And as of right now, the podcast isn't supporting us whatsoever, and student loan debt is real expensive. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love building Legos.
Rithvik,
What?
Rithvik,
Where'd you come from?
I'm. This is gonna sound crazy, but I'm from the future.
What are you talking about?
I'm from the future, and you need to get working on the podcast now because otherwise you're gonna put out the Halloween special late.
Dude, it's gonna be out by Monday.
You didn't put out the episode on Monday, and because of that, the stock market crashed. You need to work on the episode.
The stock market crashed?
Look, it's a lot to explain, but the algorithm hinged on the fact that we would put out a special on Halloween. Without it, nobody watched YouTube that day. YouTube crashed, the entire stock market plummeted, Google went up in flames, Elon Musk just committed suicide. It's mass hysteria.
Jesus. How late was I on the episode release?
7 years.
You're telling me I have to go back to the future?
No, you idiot. Just work on the podcast.